Now begins the recitation of the Aletheon, the divine avataric self-revelation of his divine presence, Avatar Adi Da Samraj. This is always already. Changes of the body-mind self are not divine self-realization. Having, as Narcissus, already presumed separate self and separate world, and his or her thus separate worldly involvements to be the case, my devotee must necessarily embrace the radical, or at the root process of demonstrating the always prior transcending of egoity, and of thus and thereby demonstrating the reality transcending of all search and necessity relative to the first six or egoic and merely conditionally developmental stages of life, such that he or she always really and directly demonstrates the reality transcending, or always prior transcending, of egoity in all of its various gross, subtle, and causal forms. Nevertheless, the changes in the experiential conditions of the body-mind self that arise even in the context of the demonstration process of the reality practice in which egoity is really and directly transcended, are not, in and of themselves, divine self-realization or realization of me as I am. Rather, any and all such experiential changes are simply characteristics that arise in the case of my devotees who are maturing toward the perfect practice of the only by me revealed and given radical or at the root reality way of Adidam or Adidam Ruchiradam. Ultimately, in the perfect practice of the reality way of Adidam, I am realized as I am. Realization of me is realization of that which is always already the case. Realization of me is not itself realization of changes in the body-mind self. Realization of me is not based on doing something with the body-mind self, or on doing something to the body-mind self, or on experiencing something in and as the body-mind self, or in and as the world. Realization of me is only about that which is always already the case, not about changes of whatever nature. Indeed, realization of me is not about anything that happens to the body-mind self. Realization of me is only about awakening to that which is always already the case. Thus, realization of me is only about awakening to the divine self-nature, self-condition, and self-state as it is. Realization of me is not about entertaining mere ideas relative to the divine self-nature, self-condition, and self-state. Nor is realization of me about engaging a practice of dissociative introversion upon the divine self-nature, self-condition, and self-state, as if it were inside something the ego I is otherwise and already identifying and being as self. When the egoic position is simply or tacitly and always already or priorly not presumed, then the transcendental spiritual self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of that which is always already the case is directly self-revealed and directly self-given by the direct means of my avatarically self-transmitted divine transcendental spiritual grace. If the transcendental spiritual self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of that which is always already the case were experientially self-evident to the ego-based or self-contracted body-mind self or psychophysical point of view, it would be experientially realized in your case now. The transcendental spiritual self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of reality itself, which is that which is always already the case, is not and cannot be experienced by the ego I of body, mind, and point of view. Rather, the transcendental spiritual self-nature, self-condition, and self-state of reality itself can only be directly self-realized as it is, and as such only by transcendental spiritual means. Therefore, devotionally recognizing me, devotionally respond to me. Therefore, devotionally recognize me, devotionally respond to me. Live by my divine avataric instruction. Turn to me. Be surrendered to me by that constant turning. Live the practice of the reality way of Adidam seriously and bring the body-mind self to one-pointed concentration in me, rather than merely wandering like a separate planet pursuing your self-patterned course in the night sky of egoic life. Do not remain ego-possessed as if you were an independent center of virtue. Turn to me only and be entirely surrendered to me, and thus perfectly given to me, such that the transcendental spiritual radiance of my divine avataric person can unknot the search of total body-mind and grant the realization of perfect knowledge of my divine transcendental spiritual state as a free gift, self-evidently shining, priorly and beyond all doubt. Such realization or perfect knowledge of me is the necessary beginning of the perfect practice of the only by me revealed and given reality way of Adidam, and most perfect realization of me, or perfect knowledge of me in the third stage of the perfect practice, or the seventh stage of life, is the most perfect demonstration of the only by me revealed and given radical or at the root reality way of Adidam or Adidam Ruchiradam. In that most perfect demonstration, there is the self-abiding divine self-recognition of all patterns of arising as merely apparent modifications of the intrinsically egoless, indivisible, and self-evidently divine reality that is always already the case. In due course, this intrinsically all transcending demonstration becomes divine indifference, and most ultimately, this most perfect and divinely indifferent demonstration outshines all of conditional existence in divine translation. Such is the transcendental spiritual nature of right, true, and inherently perfect realization of me. Here ends the recitation of the Aletheon, the divine avataric self-revelation of his divine presence, Avatar Adi Da Samraj.